Hello and welcome to another episode of the 21st Century Work-Life Podcast. I forgot where I was then. Episode 377. And this is part of this new season that I'm doing called Booknotes, where I share the notes I've made on books I've read. And my name is Pilar. Lovely to meet you if it's the first time we meet. Or I've just come back from my walk, so I need to slow down. It is today the 8th of December, and I just want to mention it because it's bonkers. It is almost 15 degrees outside in London. So yeah, strange. So the book we are looking at today, that I'm reading from today, is called The Unexpected Joy of the Ordinary, and it's by Catherine Gray. To be honest, just the title might be all you need for today. Find joy in the ordinary. Obviously, there's reasons why they suggest that, but I'm going to start with this wonderful quote. I think it's really funny. And anyway, here it is. When I was 5 years old, my mom always told me that happiness was the key to life. When I went to school, they asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up. I wrote down, happy. They told me I didn't understand the assignment, and I told them they didn't understand life. So this quote has been attributed to John Lennon, and wow, and it's almost, and this is so freaky, I really hadn't planned on this, but 8th of December was the day when John Lennon was killed. So something aligned in the universe there. And when I looked at sharing the quote with you, I had it on my Kindle Notes extract, which is something the Kindle generates with a PDF with all the quotes. And I saw it was in quotes, and I thought, I might as well tell our listeners where the quote comes from. And now I just saw it was John Lennon, and I thought, John Lennon died in December. And look at that. But let's not get derailed so early on in the episode. Let's have a look at the next quote. I'll just start from the beginning. I think this is how I've been doing it recently, and it works quite well. So, of course, at the beginning of every non-fiction book, the author tells us why they've written the book and, in a way, the point they're trying to prove. And here we look at this very early quote, which says, hedonic adaptation means that we adjust to our circumstances much more quickly than is desirable, and thus start searching for the next high. So, of course, that is this unexpected joy of the ordinary. And I think this happens in work, it happens in life, it happens all the time. Something great happens to us, and then we forget how great it was just because it's ongoing, which is lovely, and I am very fortunate to be able to say this. So I asked ChatGPT about hedonic adaptation, first about the term, which just comes from the Greek hedonic, which means pleasure or delight, and it's linked to hedonism, a philosophical view that pleasure is the highest good. And this hedonic treadmill, which is a great metaphor of being on a treadmill where we're just walking but not really moving, is the idea of returning to a stable level of happiness all the time. So we're just adapting. I thought I'd share what I found. So from a biological point of view, the systems involved in reward and emotion are tuned for survival. So they respond strongly to new experiences but tone down with repetition. As something becomes predictable, the brain releases fewer feel-good responses. Then, of course, we've got the link to attention, where novelty pulls focus, while familiar experiences fade into the background. When something stops capturing attention, it no longer produces the same emotional spark, even if the situation itself hasn't changed. Then we've got the link to comparison, where people constantly measure their circumstances against expectations and against others. For example, as living conditions improve, expectations tend to rise alongside them, pushing the emotional baseline back towards where it started. And finally, the mind quickly turns repeated outcomes into normal assumptions. Good fortune or improved circumstances become part of what's expected, reducing the emotional impact. And this is the thing that for those of us who are fortunate to have a good life, it's sometimes we're searching for a happiness that actually, if we just understood what we have, then we'd be happier, funnily enough. Anyway, I'll carry on with the quotes. The extraordinary is not where the cellular level happiness is at. It's in the ordinary. And then there's something here which needs a little bit of explanation because it's a great quote in itself, talking of unexpected, but it does need some context to make sense. So the quote is, one person's squirrel is another's beach cat. And this comes from a story from the author saying that what we take utterly for granted as ordinary is actually extraordinary to those visiting our homes. I remember an Australian friend stopping in her tracks at the sight of a squirrel and insisting we sit and watch him crunch through a monkey nut for 20 minutes. And then, while running alongside a beach in Palma, I stopped dead at what was for me an extraordinary sight. A cat, swelled on a beach rock licking its paw. Hell's bells, I had never seen a cat on a beach before. Exactly. So same thing, isn't it? One person's squirrel is another's beach cat. And I get this a lot. And maybe you do too. When you discover something like a new author or a new theory or something, and it's amazing, it's really surprising, and you really want to get to know more about it. And then someone says, oh, yeah, that comes from blah, blah. Yeah, that's old news. But the same, very similar thing, I think. But I like that one person's squirrel is another's beach cat. Then, a very practical note, when I'm sleep deprived, I tend to focus on what is not working rather than what is working. Again, ordinary things that bring us joy, sleep, which I used to work with someone who said it was an option. No, it's not. It's not an option at all. It's something that we need, and hopefully we can get it. Oh, I love this one because it helps me understand where anger comes from. And I'm a person who does get very angry. I also get very happy. But I like this. So, being consistently angry is your nervous system saying, my boundaries are being crossed. I'm unhappy and sod this for a game of soldiers. I like that because a lot of the time with me, anger is about that. Well, one, it's unhappiness. You're unhappy at a situation, and anger is that reaction towards the outside world, or sometimes the person you think is causing that. And of course, the boundary is being crossed. So yes, excuse me, but I have to see what sod this for a game of soldiers means exactly. Funnily enough, I've heard this so many times, but like with Spanish phrases, I'm just not sure of the very specific meaning and where it comes from. So the phrase is used to express frustration, exasperation, or the decision to give up on something. It implies that the activity or situation was supposed to be light-hearted, pointless, or trivial, like a game of soldiers, but has become too tedious, unpleasant, or not worth the effort. In plain English, I'm done with this rubbish. The origin, because I asked ChatGPT about the origin, it appears to have its roots in British military slang, of course. The earliest printed uses date from around 1940-41, during the Second World War era. In that context, a game of soldiers may have carried a bitter irony. What starts as service or duty, expected to be soldiering, becomes absurd or pointless under difficult war conditions. Alternatively, some suggest the game of soldiers is metaphorical, like a childish game of toy soldiers, something unserious or trivial. And saying sod this for a game of soldiers means this isn't even worth pretending it's a game. The phrase's origin is described as obscure. Even dictionaries note there's no definitive etymology. There are different theories, some attributed to wartime soldiers fed up with their lot, others to a figurative use comparing unpleasant tasks to childish games. And then I love this, like always, ChatGPT. If you like, I can give you other British idioms, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, so yeah, I quite like the sod this for a game of soldiers, especially in our context, meaning something that is actually serious. Talking of idioms, I am working on the A to Z of Spanish refrains. I will tell you more about it when I pick it up again in my personal section. So I love this. I love going back to idioms, especially those that I don't use very much, and finding out what they mean exactly, what they're supposed to mean, or how the use has evolved and where they come from. So going back to the reasons or where anger comes from, there's another quote from the book, The Unexpected Joy of the Ordinary, which says, people who are shouting generally really want to cry. I always think that when I cross paths with someone who is unhappy or making a whole lot of noise, then sometimes there's really something sad about them. Right, this one for all of you self-employed out there or anyone who puts themselves forward a lot. I love this one. Rejection is just a redirection. Right, now we've got this one, which I really like because it's about what is happiness? What do we mean by happiness? And it comes from Dr. Kolb, who's someone that the author quotes in the book. People mistakenly think happiness is the absence of negative emotion. But if you're always trying to avoid negative emotions, you won't do anything important. The cost of doing something of value is almost always hard work. Okay, now some more random ones, and as the author gets into the different things that bring happiness during ordinary life. But going back to sleep. Now that our work emails live in our phones, by prodding it into life 45 seconds after we've woken up, we are literally choosing to be at work 45 seconds after we've woken up. Bonkers. It's true. I mean, to be honest, we have an unwritten and unspoken rule in my household where phones don't enter the bedroom. So the phones live in the lounge, and actually I have a almost written rule for myself that I don't pick up anything from my phone until after I've had breakfast. That's it, because if not, this happens that your day just gets hijacked in a way before you've had time to even think for yourself or be with yourself actually. You've got input from the outside world. So I quite like that. All right, we're starting to wrap up. Then there's another one. I really like this one. A book is proof that humans are capable of working magic. All we need is to move our bodies with the motive of feeling good rather than looking good. I totally get that one. Happiness is not having what you want, but wanting what you have. Well, I really hope you enjoyed that, The Unexpected Joy of the Ordinary by Catherine Gray. If you want to say hello, you can find me on the email pilar@virtualnotdistant.com. And if you too are interested in Spanish idioms for some strange reason, if you go to the A to Z of Spanish culture.com, I think that's the address, it's a WordPress site. And I have a form where you can fill in, just put your details in and I'll let you know when the book comes out. Or you can just email me and say, Pilar, you know that book that will probably come out in the next year and a half? I would like to have a look. Yeah, there's that, which leads me nicely into my personal updates today. So let's get on with them, seeing as I already did a break. So if you were just here for the book, thank you very much for listening. If you want to hang around for a little bit more and just hear what I'm up to, then let's do it. All right, now I have to pull up my Trello. It's one of the few things that I still use as I don't know. Someone asked me the other day, someone I haven't seen in a while, if I was retired. And I said, well, kind of. I still work as a voiceover. I am writing and I work as Pilates instructor. It feels like I'm retired. It's wonderful. If retiring is just do what you want, it's great. So I've got updates for all those three things. Let's start with the voiceover, because I did a wonderful job the other day. I didn't ask if I could talk about it, but I can say it's an audio guide. But it was an audio guide where instead of one person reading and narrating, for example, I used to do audio guides for museums where I would just narrate the story behind a painting, or I would guide the people through, I don't know, the Roman baths in Bath. If you listen to it in Spanish, my voice is there. This was, again, an audio guide, but it had 3 people involved. So there were 3 of us, which was really nice. What was even nicer was a couple of things. It's the first time I worked with this production company. It's the first time I worked through this new agent. She's lovely. We had a read-through. The 3 of us gathered to sit down around a table and read through the script, which I've never done that in a voiceover before. I don't know if this is common, but when we read through scripts, even in groups, we just go into the studio and read it. So we did that, which was great because the director was able to give us lots of very general direction that we could then implement in the studio. When we got into the studio, it was wonderful. So, don't know if you've ever been, for some reason, into a voiceover studio. You've got 2 rooms, which are connected a lot of the time. You've got your booth, which is where you sit as the voiceover. And then you've got the studio part with the engineer, usually a big sofa for the client, some space. If you're doing lots of audiovisual, you've got a big screen so you can see the pictures. So the 3 of us were there and we had a big window that separated the sound desk from us. Usually what happens is that the producer sits next to the sound engineer or sits on the sofa or on a different table if they've got more space, and they have their talkback, that is the microphone through which they talk to you in the studio. But this guy, I've never seen this before, he actually stood next to our glass so he could feel really connected to us, and he gave us all the direction through there. It was beautiful to see because sometimes I could see him mouthing. He'd also written the script. Actually, he really wanted to be in the booth with us. I loved it. I loved the energy that created. And of course, I really liked him, to be honest. I liked him. So that's good, because if I hadn't liked him, that might have been too intense, but I did like him. And what I also liked is that there was a couple of artistic choices he made, which I liked. One was, and just going back a little bit, because this will make sense. This is part of the context. We were 3 Spanish original voices, but the audio guide was in English. So it was supposed to be English for people who speak English when they're somewhere else in Spain. We spoke in our accents, which I'll come back in a second. But what I really liked is sometimes when I've done things where they want a Spanish speaker, but we're speaking in English, I will be directed sometimes to give the English intonation, not the Spanish one, because they want a certain version of Spanish accent. And so a lot of the times I have to be given reads because my instinct, as much as I've spoken English all my life and as much as I work in English, sometimes my instinct is to give a different intonation to what you would expect from an English person. So he sometimes did that, not very much, but sometimes he had something in mind and something that sounded right because of the reasons I've just said. But then if we gave him something different, he would go with that. And I love that he said a couple of things. One, to another actor, he said, "Great, not what I had in mind, but it just totally goes with your character." I was like, nice. And to me, he gave me a really nice piece of feedback. He said, "You always start maybe a paragraph or a sentence and you start and I think, oh, where's she going with that? And then you manage to just do something that just brings it right to where I wanted it." And I thought, well, that's good. It's good to know I do that. Haven't got a clue how. So don't ask me to do it on tap. And then one more thing is that, again, going back to these accent things. So my accent, I don't know if you listening can tell where my accent is from. I did recently a group ADR, which is additional dialogue recording, where you get a bunch of actors to do the background voices. So for example, if people are in a bar, you hear and every now and then you might catch a word. So I do a lot of those. I love them. You just go in a group. And so every now and then you get single actors, so people who need to do a single line, like at the airport when you hear passengers for the flight to Madrid, blah, blah, blah. So you get one person comes up from the group into the microphone, says that line. We were doing an international cast. A couple of us were Spanish. And the director who's worked with me for ages now. So she said, oh, we need a woman to do this line. Okay, so I got up and when I was at the microphone, I said, oh, but maybe you want someone French because of the setup. And she said, no, you can do it. We won't know where you're from. So I love that because I've been asked if I was Dutch at one point because my husband is Dutch. So obviously I'd picked up something from him. Spanish, yes. I used to be when I first came to the UK, my accent was further back in my mouth. So I sounded American or Irish because my R's were different. And then I got fed up with that, so I reverted to a Spanish accent I'd never had before I left Spain. And then when I went to drama school, I learned to bring my sounds a little bit further forward in the mouth. So sometimes you hear that I live in Britain, not somewhere else. But yeah, my accent is whatever. And recently, a couple of people asked if I was French, which I don't know where that came from. So anyway, just to say that there was me in the studio, and there was another lady who had an American parent, and she'd learned her English in an American way. And then we had the other actor who was half Greek. So actually, when he spoke with a Spanish accent, he actually sounded a little bit Greek as well. And that was all fine. None of us were asked to change the accent. And I thought, I really like this because this is also showing that people learn a foreign language in different ways and they appropriate the accent into their circumstances. You can't say, funnily enough, yeah, just speak like you would in Spain. Well, look, 3 of us, we speak completely different kinds of English because of our backgrounds. So anyway, the producer doesn't listen to this show, but I think if he does, then it was fantastic. And maybe at one point I'll be able to say who it was and what it was for. Right, so that is part of my easy professional life now because I've just been doing it for so long. I just love going into a studio. Into the not as easy part, which is the writing. I am really proud of my latest draft of All the World's a Workplace, which is now with people who will give me feedback and with the publishers as well. So thank you, everyone, because I know a lot of you listen to the show. I hope you enjoyed. That's the first time. I hope you get something from it. And then I would love to hear what you think because I trust all of you and need to see if I have to change something. I hope it's not something major. Anyway, I'm really proud of it, but I will speak about that later. However, I'm a little bit disappointed with my cozy mystery, which I've just picked up. And interesting, I wrote these notes about being disappointed with it some time ago, and I can't remember why it was. I think probably because there's still so much work to do on it. I know what it is. Okay, it says not my genre, but sticking with it. I need to find my voice. I'd gone into memoir territory. I know what it was. I was actually trying to give too much of background to the character, which she's not based on me psychologically. And in fact, I really worked quite hard on the character not making the same choices I would make because I didn't think they were right. And well, it's not where I wanted to go with the book. But I did set her in the world of voiceover because, as you've heard, I have a lot of experience in that world. And actually, I think it's quite interesting sometimes to have a murder book set in this. That's one of the things they say, for especially cozy mysteries. You give something else to the reader. Anyway, so what I was doing, I was going into, because in this, when I did this other job and this, her memories were my memories and not of interest to the reader, especially at the beginning of the book. When I was reading it, I was like, oh no, this is... But to be honest, I think I just need to go in, chop lots of stuff out and approach it again as something new. I'm reading a cozy at the moment. It's very plain, as in there's nothing strange with it. It's very formulaic, which is good for me because I can see how it works and what works with it. So for example, chapter 1 is about this lady. She has set up a film production company in a rural village. So that first episode is all about understanding that world because that's the world that gets her into a mystery. Chapter 2 then comes back a lot more and then we start to see her as a person, see her in the village. So I'm like, okay, I tried to do all of that in chapter 1 and put more backstory. I have to say, though, that one of the things I've learned through editing the last pieces of nonfiction, especially All the World's a Workplace, is coming to it with the question, how is this of use to the reader? And when you write All the World's a Workplace, which is about remote work, it's got all my opinions and my stories, but how is this of use? And sometimes I came to the book and thought, this is not of use. That's an appendix. Just put it for the people who are curious at the back of the book. Other times I just had to add one line, and that was enough. And I came straight out of that process into my first contact with the cozy mystery in months, if not almost a year. It's the same story. How is what I'm telling you of use to the reader? I mean, they always say there's got to be a reason why you do this, especially in mystery, like the famous example of, I think, Chekhov. He either said it or supposed to say, if you show a gun, that someone has a gun in Act 1, you better bring it out in Act 2 or 3, I think it was. Something like that, but you know what I mean. What I've seen is I've come into that story and looked at everything that's happening thinking, ooh, what is this foreshadowing? How can I come back to this later on? So that's been helpful. So even though I say that I was disappointed, it doesn't matter. I'm just going to have a fabulous time, and one day I might finish the book. And then to wrap it all up, something about my journey as a Pilates teacher, which is never ending, isn't it? The practice is never ending because there's so much to learn. I mean, to be honest, I was thinking this morning that I can't teach an intermediate class. I can teach beginners, which is hard. I can do a general class, which is the easiest. I just give lots of options in an exercise. So regardless of your level, you can pick one that is good for you. But I wouldn't be able to do intermediate because the exercises are more advanced and I can't do some of them yet. I haven't practiced them enough. My body hasn't got used to them. I don't know if it's strength or flexibility. It doesn't matter. So I've learned that about myself. This is never, ever learning. But one of the things I've done is I signed up in November to another teacher training course online. It was heavily reduced, which is why I did it. And it's by the guys who broadcast Pilates Elephants, which is a great show about the elephants in the room, actually, things we never talk about in Pilates, things we never question in Pilates because it's always been done like this and we've been told at some point this is how it is. So I wanted to support them. And I also wanted to do it because I have learned my Pilates in my local gym. I'm now teaching there. And my training was very swift. So I didn't learn a lot of different methodology, not even exercises, methodology. And I wanted something different. And I thought these guys are completely different. What I'm hearing in their podcast is that I will get a different experience with them. And I have. And the most important thing that I've gained from it is this notion of get them moving. How people in the class just get them moving as soon as possible. And then during the exercise, give them the refinements, give them the alignment cues even. Because the way I've been taught is you align people first. And then I would start giving them refinements when they're not even moving yet. And at the beginning, when I started teaching, this was an issue. I could see people getting impatient. But I didn't quite understand how to get through that. And now I know. And this relates completely to also the cozy mystery I was telling you about that I've been struggling with, which is about getting the story moving. So at the beginning, I found, this makes sense now, I found that I was giving too much detail of irrelevant things to the reader. I just need to get them into the world, get them into the story. And then when I've got them, as we carry on, then I can start feeding in backstory and everything. And if any of you are writers, you will know this and you will think, Pilar, really? How many years have you been thinking about writing and reading and listening about writing? But isn't it the case that until you get going and doing things, you don't realize what you've really learned and what you then need to apply? So I'm going to leave you there because, again, thank you very much for your time. I have been chatting for a while. It's a pleasure to have you here with me. I'm going to try and get one more episode before the Christmas break. I might not. Otherwise, I will be back mid-January or maybe late January, depends how things go. Hello, listeners. Future Pilar here, talking to you from my phone because there's no way I'm going to get another episode before the end of 2025. So all I wanted to do was pop in, say thank you very much for coming back at the end of the year to listen to the show. It means a lot to me. So yes, I don't take it for granted. Have a lovely end to 2025. If you celebrate Christmas, I hope you have a wonderful time. And I really look forward to being back here in 2026. I hope the beginning of the year is great for all of us. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, enjoy.